It was not yet dawn, but Old Man Curry was abroad. More than that, he was fully dressed. It was a tradition of the jungle circuit that he had never been seen in any other condition. The owner of the Bible horses, in shirt sleeves and bareheaded, would have created a sensation among his competing brethren, some of whom pretended to believe that the patriarch slept in his clothes. Others, not so positive on this point, averred that Old Man Curry slept with one eye open and one ear cocked toward the O'Connor barn, where his enemies met to plot against him. Summer and winter, heat and cold, there was never a change in the old man's raiment. The rusty frock coat black where it was not green, gray along the seams, and ravelled at the skirts, the broad-brimmed and battered slouch hat, and the freight string tie had seen fat years and lean years on all the tracks of the jungle circuit, and no man could say when these things had been new or their wearer had been young. Old Man Curry was a fixture, as familiar a sight as the fence about the track, and his shabby attire was as much a part of his quaint personality as his habit of quoting the wise men of the Old Testament and borrowing the names of the prophets for his horses. The first faint golden glow appeared in the east, the adjoining stables loomed dark in the half-light, here and there lanterns moved, and close at hand rose the wail of a sleepy exercise boy, roused from slumber by a liberal application of rawhide. From the direction of the track came the muffled beat of hoofs, swelling to a crescendo, and diminishing to a thin tattoo as the thoroughbreds rounded the upper turn. Old Man Curry squared his shoulders, turned his face toward the east, and saluted the dawn in characteristic fashion. "A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away," he quoted. "Solomon was framin' up a system for hossmen, I reckon. A time to get and a time to lose. Only thing is, Solomon himself couldn't figure which was which with some of these rascals." "Oh, Mose." "Yes, Sue, boss." "Comin'." Jockey Mosby Jones emerged from the tackle room, rubbing his eyes with one hand and tugging at his sweater with the other. Later in the day he would be a butterfly of fashion and an offense to the eye in loud checks and conflicting colors. Now he was only a very sleepy little darky in a dingy red sweater and disreputable trousers. "Seem like to me I ain't had no sleep at all," complained Mose, swallowing a tremendous yawn. "This yer night work sutny got me goin' south for fair." Shanghai, the hostler, appeared leading Alicia, the star of the curry barn. "Send him the full distance, Mose," said the aged owner, and set him down hard for the half-mile pull home. "Hard, boss?" "As hard as he can go." "But, boss," there was a note of strong protest in the jockey's voice. "You heard me," said Old Man Curry, already striding in the direction of the track. "Extend him and let's see what he's got." "Extend him so's everybody can see what he's got," mumbled Mose rebelliously. "Ha!" In the shadow of the paddock Old Man Curry came upon his friend, the bald-faced kid, a youth of many failings, frankly confessed. The kid sat upon the fence, nursing an old-fashioned silver stopwatch, for he was clocking the morning workouts. "Morning, Frank," said Old Man Curry. "You're early." "But not early enough for some of these birds," responded the kid. "You galloping something, old-timer?" "Leash'll work in a minute or two." "Aha. I kind of figured you'd throw another work into him before tomorrow's race." "Confound it. If I didn't know you pretty well, I'd say you ought to have your head examined. I'd say they ought to crawl your cupola for loose shingles. And if you didn't know me at all, Frank, you'd say I was just plain crazy, eh?" Old Man Curry regarded his young friend with thoughtful gravity. Here were two wise men of the turf approaching truth from widely varying standpoints, yet able to meet on common ground and exchange convictions to mutual profit. "Spit it out, son," said Old Man Curry. "I'd sort of like to know how crazy I am." "Fair enough," said the bald-faced kid. Elisha's a good horse, a cracking good horse, but tomorrow's the end of the meeting and you've gone and saved him up to slip him into the toughest race on the card on a day when all the burglars at the track will be leveling for the getaway money. You could have found a softer spot for him to pick up a purse, and, take it from me, the winner's end is about all you'll get around here. The bookmakers lost a lot of confidence in human nature when you pulled that horsehair stunt on them, and they wouldn't give you a price now. Not even if you started a nice motherly old cow against stake horses. As for Elisha, the bookies begin reaching for the erasers the minute they hear his name. You couldn't bet diamonds against donuts on that horse. They've been stung too often. Maybe I wasn't aiming to bet on him, was the mild reply. Then why put him up against such a hard game? Oh, it was a kind of a notion I had. I know it'll be a tough race. Engdahl is in there, and O'Connor and a lot more that have been undercover. Leisha is going a mile this morning. Better catch him when he breaks. He's off. Whatever Jockey Mosby Jones thought of his orders, he knew better than to disobey them. He sent Elisha the distance, driving him hard from the half-mile pole to the wire, and the bald-faced kid's astounded comments furnished a profane obbligato. "Take a look at that," said he, thrusting the watch under old man Curry's nose. "Pretty close to the track record for a mile, ain't it? And every clocker on the track got him too. If I was you, I'd peel the hide off that nigger for showing a horse up like that." "No," said old man Curry, "I reckon I won't lick Mose this time." "You forgot that Jeremiah is going in the last race tomorrow, didn't you?" "Jeremiah!" The bald-faced kid spoke with scorn. "Why, he bleeds every time out. It's a shame to start him." "Maybe he won't bleed tomorrow, Frank." "He won't, eh?" The bald-faced kid drew out the leather-backed volume which was his constant companion, and began to thumb the leaves rapidly. "You're always heaving your friend Solomon at me. I'll give you a quotation I got out of the fourth reader at school, something about judging the future by the past. Look here, Jeremiah bled and was pulled up. Jeremiah bled badly. Why, everybody around here knows that he's a bleeder." "There you go again," said old man Curry patiently. "You study them dad-burned dope sheets, and all you can see is what a hoss has done. You listen to me, it ain't what a hoss did last week or last month, it's what he's going to do today that counts." "A quitter will quit and a bleeder will bleed," said the kid sententiously. "And Jeremiah says the leopard can't change his spots," said old man Curry. "Have it your own way, Frank." Exactly 24 hours later, the bald-faced kid, peering across the track to the backstretch, saw old man Curry lead a black horse to the quarter pole, exchange a few words with Mose, adjust the bit, and stand aside. "What's that one, kid?" The question was asked by Shine McManus, a professional clocker employed by a bookmaker to time the various workouts and make a report on them at noon. "That's Jeremiah," said the kid. "The old man hasn't worked him much lately." "Good reason why," said Shine. "I wouldn't work a horse either if he bled every time he got out of a walk. There he goes." Jeremiah went to the half-pole like the wind, slacked somewhat on the upper turn, and floundered heavily into the stretch. "Bleeding, ain't he?" asked Shine. "He acts like it, yes, you can see it now." As Jeremiah neared the paddock, he stopped to a choppy gallop, and the railbird saw that blood was streaming from both nostrils and trickling from his mouth. "Ain't that sickening? You wouldn't think that old man Curry would abuse a horse like that." The bald-faced kid went valiantly to the defense of his aged friend. He would criticize old man Curry if he saw fit, but no one else had that privilege. "Ah, Where do you get that abusing a horse stuff? It don't really hurt a horse anymore, and it would hurt you to have a good nosebleed. It just chokes him up so he can't get his breath, and he quits, that's all. Yes, but it looks bad, and it's a shame to start a horse in that condition. The argument waxed long and loud, and in the end the kid was vanquished, borne down by superior numbers. The popular verdict was that Old Man Curry ought to be ashamed of himself for owning and starting a confirmed bleeder like Jeremiah. On getaway day, the speculative soul whose financial operations show a loss makes a determined effort to plunge a red ink balance into a black one. On getaway day, the honest owner has doubts and the dishonest owner has fears. On getaway day, the bookmaker wears deep creases in his brow, for few horses are laid up with him, and he wonders which dead one will come to life. On getaway day, the tout redoubles his activities, hoping to be far away before his victims awake to a sense of injury. On getaway day, the program boy bawls his loudest and the hot dog purveyor pushes his fragrant wares with the utmost energy. On getaway day, the judges are more than usually alert, scenting outward indications of a job. On getaway day, the betting ring boils and seethes and bubbles, the prices are short and arguments are long, strange stories are current and disquieting rumors hang in the very air. Now, if ever, is the motto. Shoot 'em in the back and run, is the spirit of the day, reduced to words. In the midst of all this feverish excitement, Old Man Curry maintained his customary calm. He had seen many getaway days on many tracks. Elisha was entered in the fourth race, the feature event of the day, and promptly on the dot, Elisha appeared in the paddock, steaming after a brisk gallop down the stretch. Soon there came a wild rush from the betting ring, the prices were up and Elisha ruled the opening favorite at 7-5. Did Mr. Curry think that Elisha could win? Wasn't the price a little short? In case Mr. Curry had any doubts about Elisha, what other horse did he favor? The old man answered all questions patiently, courteously, and truthfully, and patience, courtesy, and truth seldom meet in the paddock. Well, about Lisha, now, he was an honest hoss and he would try as hard to win at 7-5 as any other price. Lisha was trained not to look in the bettin' ring on the way to the post. Yes, Lisha had a chance, he always had a chance count of bein' honest and doin' the best he knowed how. The other owners? Well, now, it was this way, he couldn't really say what they was up to, he expected, though, they'd all be tryin'. Himself personally, he only bothered about his own hosses, they kept his hands full. Was Engel going to bet on cornflower? Well, about Engel, he's right over there, Sonny, better ask him. After Little Mose had been given his riding orders, briefly, they were to do the best he could and come home in front if possible. Old Man Curry turned Elisha over to Shanghai and went into the betting ring. Elisha's price was still 7-5. The old man paused in front of the first book, a thick wallet in his fingers. The bookmaker, a red-eyed, dyspeptic-looking person, glanced down, recognized the flowing white beard under the slouch hat, took note of the thick wallet, and with one swipe of his eraser sent Elisha to even money. That's it. Squat before you're hurt, grunted Elisha's owner, shouldering his way through the crowd to the next stand. This bookmaker was an immensely fat gentleman with purplish jowls and piggy eyes which narrowed to slits as they rested upon the corpulent roll of bills which Old Man Curry was holding up to him. Don't want it, he wheezed. What ails it? Old Man Curry's voice rose in a high, piping treble, shrill with wrath. It's good money. I got some of it from you. Your slate says 6-5, Lisha. Don't want it, repeated the bookmaker, his eyes roving over the crowd. Get it next door. That's a fine howdy-do, snapped the exasperated old man. I can't bet on my own horse at a short price, too. Word ran around the betting ring that Old Man Curry was trying to bet so much money on Elisha that the bookmakers refused his wagers, and there was an immediate stampede for the betting booths and a demand for Elisha at any figure. The third bookmaker forestalled all argument by wiping out the prophet's price entirely, while the crowd jeered. "Does a bet scare you that bad?" asked Old Man Curry with sarcasm. "Any bet from you would scare me, Professor. Any bet at all. Try the next store." Old Man Curry worked his way around the circle, Elisha's price dropping before his advance. His very appearance in the ring had been enough to encourage play on the horse, and the large roll of bills which he carried so conspicuously added a powerful impetus to the rush on the favorite. "Curry's betting $1 million. Elisha's a cinch." The old coots got scared. Elisha dropped to even money, then went to odds on. At 4-5 and even at 3-5 the crowd played him, and sheet and ticket writers were kept busy recording bets on the Curry horse. Somewhere in the maelstrom Old Man Curry encountered the bald-faced kid plying his vocation. He was earnestly endeavoring to persuade a whiskered rustic to bet more money than he owned on cornflour at 3-1. Though very busy, the young man was abreast of the situation and fully informed of events, as indeed he usually was. Retaining his interest in the rustic by the simple expedient of thrusting a forefinger through his buttonhole, the kid leaned toward the old man. "See what your little nigger did, riding that horse out yesterday morning? You might have got 2 or 3-1 on him if Mose hadn't tipped him off to every clocker at the track." Old Man Curry digested this remark in silence. "I hear that Angle is sending the mare for a killing," whispered the kid. "Know anything about it?" "Everything is bein' sent for a killing today," said Old Man Curry. "Well, she'll have Lisha to beat, I reckon. And all he's runnin' for is the purse, Frank, like you said. I did my best to bet M until the price got too plumb ridiculous, but the children of Israel wouldn't take my money." The bald-faced kid glanced at the roll of bills which the old man still held in his hand. "Well, no wonder," he snorted. "Don't you know that ain't any way to do? You come in here and wave a chunk like that under their noses, and, by golly, you ought to have your head examined." "I reckon you're right," said the old man apologetically. "All I ask is please don't have me yanked up before the lunacy board till after the last race, because—" "Ah, rats. Beat it now till I land this sucker." "Frank," whispered the old man, "tell him to save a couple of dollars to bet on Jeremiah." It was a great race. Cornflour, lightly weighted, able to set a pace or hold one, did not show in front until the home stretch was reached. Then the mare suddenly shot out of the ruck and flashed into the lead. But she soon had company. Honest old Elisha had been plugging along in the dust for the first half-mile, but at that point he began to run, and the Curry colors moved up with great celerity. Merritt, glancing over his shoulders, shook out the last rap on the mare just as Elisha thundered into second place. Gathering speed with every awkward bound, the big bay horse slowly closed the gap. At the paddock there was no longer daylight between them, and Old Man Curry stopped combing his beard. He knew what that meant. So did Jockey Merritt, plying whip and spur. So did Al Angle and those who had been given the quiet tip to play cornflour for a killing. So did the bald-faced kid, edging away from the rustic who, with a cornflour ticket clutched in his sweating palm, seemed to be trying to swallow the thyroid cartilage of his larynx. So did Jockey Mosby Jones, driving straight into the hurricane of cheers which beat down from the packed grandstand. "Elisha! Elisha! Come on, you Elisha!" Now the gaunt bay head was at the mare's flank, now at the saddle girth, now it blotted out the shoulder, now they were neck and neck, one more terrific bound, an ear-splitting yell from the grandstand, and Elisha's number went slowly to the top of the pole. The judges were examining the opening betting on the last race of the meeting. "Ah, we have Old Man Curry with us again," said the presiding judge. "Jeremiah. If the meeting had another 2 weeks to run, I'd ask him not to start that horse again. I'm told he bled at his workout this morning. By the way, the old man acted sort of grouchy after the Elisha race. Did you notice it?" "Yes, and I know why," said the associate judge. "He tried to bet a barrel of money and the bookmakers laughed at him. As a general thing, he bets a few dollars in each book. This time he went at him too strong. The bookies are a little leery of that innocent old boy." "Call him innocent if you want to. He's either the shrewdest horseman on this circuit or the luckiest, and I be damned if I can tell which. Jeremiah, 20-1. If he bled this morning, he ought to be 1,000. So, also, thought the employer of Shine McManus, none other than the fat gentleman with the purple jowls, otherwise Izzy Marks, known to his friends as Easy Marks. McManus was a not unimportant cog in the Secret Service department maintained by the bookmaker. "Listen, Mac," wheezed Marks. "I want you to tail Old Man Curry from now until the barrier goes up, understand?" Yes, you told me the horse bled this morning, but that old fox has got the miracle habit. I'd hate to give him too long a price on a dead horse, understand, Mac? If Curry is going to bet a plugged nickel on this here Jeremiah, I'll hold him out and not take a cent on him. Stick around close and shoot me backward by Abby. The rest of these fellows have got 20-1 on him. He's 15-1 in this book until I hear from you. Hurry, now." There were 10 horses entered in the final race of the meeting, and 9 of them were strongly touted as good things. The 10th was Jeremiah, and the most reckless hustler at the track refused to consider the black horse as a contender for anything but sanguinary honors. "Him? Nix. Didn't you hear about him? Why, he bled this morning in his workout. No chance." Of course there were those who did not believe this, so they asked Jeremiah's owner, and Old Man Curry stamped up and down the paddock stall and complained querulously. They asked him if Jeremiah had a chance, and he replied that Elisha was a good hoss, a crackin' good hoss, but they wouldn't let him bet his money. They asked him if Jeremiah was likely to bleed, and he told them that a bookmaker who wouldn't take a bet when it was shoved under his nose ought to be run off the track. They asked him what the other owners were doing and were informed that he had a tarnation good mind to make a holler to the judges. Word of this condition of affairs soon reached Mr. Marks. The old nut is ravin' all over the place about how he couldn't get a bet down on Elisha. Says if he wasn't allowed to bet on the best horse in his barn, he certainly ain't going to bet on the worst one. Oh, yes, and he's talkin' about makin' a holler to the judges. Fat chance, chuckled Marks, and Jeremiah went to 25-1. Clear and high above the hum of the betting ring rose the notes of a bugle. The last field of the season was being called to the track, and instead of the usual staccato summons, the bugler blew taps. "There she goes, boys," bellowed the bookmakers. "That's goodbye for a whole year, you know. Bet 'em fast. They're on the way to the post. Only a few minutes more." The final attack closed in around the stands. Men who had solemnly promised themselves not to make another bet caught the fever and hurled themselves into the jam, bent on exchanging coin of the realm for pasteboard tickets and hope of sudden prosperity. It was the last race of the season, wasn't it, and goodbye to the Bangtails for another year. During this mad attack, Abby squirmed through the mob and plucked at Marks's sleeve. It was his third report. "The old bird is settin' out there in the corner of the stall all by himself, chewin' a straw. Says he's so disgusted he don't care if he sees the race or not. I started to kid him about being such a crab and, honest, I was afraid he'd bite me. Mr. Marks grinned and chalked up 40-1 on Jeremiah. Now let him bleed, said he. The distance of the final event was 3/4 of a mile, and the crowd in the betting ring continued to swarm about the stands until the clang of the gong warned them that the race was on. Then there was a wild rush for the lawn. Even the fat Mr. Marks climbed down from his perch and waddled out into the sunshine, blinking as he turned his small eyes toward the back stretch. Now little Mose had been watching the starter carefully and had thrown his mount at the barrier just as it rose in the air, but there were other jockeys in the race who had done the same thing, and Jeremiah's was not the only early speed that sizzled down to the half-mile pole. At least 4 of the good things were away to a running start: Fireball, Sky Pilot, Harry Root, and Resolution. Jeremiah trailed the quartet, content to kick clods at the second division. On the upper turn, Fireball and Harry Root found the pace too warm for them and dropped back. Jeremiah found himself in third place, coasting along easily under a strong pull. The presiding judge turned his binoculars upon the black horse and favored him with a searching scrutiny. "Ah, ha," said he, wagging his head. "I thought as much. Jeremiah may have bled this morning, but he ain't bleeding now, and that little nigger is almost breaking his jaw to keep him from running over the 2 in front. Old man Curry again. Oh, but he's a cute rascal. I'd rather see him get away with it than some of these other owners, at that," said the associate judge. "So would I. I kind of like the old coot. Now what on earth do you suppose he's done to that horse since this morning?" A few thousand spectators were asking variations of the same question, but one spectator asked no questions at all. The bald-faced kid was reduced by stuttering degrees to dumb amazement. He had ignored Old Man Curry's kindly suggestion and had persuaded all and sundry to plunge heavily on Fireball. It really was not much of a contest. Sky Pilot, on the rail, swung wide turning into the stretch and carried Resolution with him. Like a flash, little Mose shot the black horse through the opening and straightened away for the wire, an open length away for the wire, an open length in the lead. "Come get him, jocks," shrilled Mose. "Come get old Jeremiah today." The most that can be said for the other jockeys is that they tried, but little Mose hugged the rail and Jeremiah came booming down the home stretch alone, fighting for his head and hoping for some real competition which never quite arrived. The black horse won by 3 open lengths, one with wraps still on his jockey's wrists, and, as the form chart stated, did not bleed and was never fully extended. "Well, anyhow," said Mr. Marks, as he wheezed back to his place of business, "Curry won't get anything but the purse again, and that'll help some. If he brought a dead horse around here in a wagon, the best he'd get from me would be 1-2. The judges, of course, were curious. They invited Old Man Curry into the stand to ask him if he had bet on Jeremiah. "Gentlemen," said he, removing his battered slouch hat, "I give you my word, I never went near that betting ring but once today, and that was to bet on a real hoss. Elisha, I says, and I shoved it at 'em. Judges, they laughed at me. They wouldn't take a cent. Not a cent. And I was so mad." Yes, said the presiding judge, soothingly, "but how do you account for Jeremiah bleeding in his work this morning and running such a good race this afternoon?" "Gentlemen," said Old Man Curry, "I don't account for it. Solomon was the smartest man that ever lived, I reckon, and there was a lot of things he never figured out. I reckon now, if he'd been in this business." "Goodbye, Mr. Curry," said the presiding judge, "and good luck." The bald-faced kid might see miracles with his eyes, but there was that about him which demanded explanation. Chastened in spirit, utterly humble and cast down, he called upon Old Man Curry. He found him seated in his tackle room, reading the Old Testament by the light of a lantern. Come in, Frank. Got the lunacy bored with you? Don't rub it in. And if you can spare the time, I wish you'd tell me what you've been up to with Jeremiah. Oh, Jeremiah. Well, now, he's a better hoss than some folks think. There wasn't anything wrong with him but just them little bleedin' spells. When I got him cured of those,